I'm here today with Kyle of Exhorder to talk about their latest upcoming record, Defectum Omnium, out March 8th on Nuclear Blast. It's definitely a pleasure to talk to you about this new record. How's things going?
Oh, it's my honor and pleasure to be here to share this conversation with you. Uh, Everything's going great right now. We're kind of riding a nice wave, and it's good to be here. It's been a minute.
So let me start off by asking you to do a little bit of a mental exercise here and think about Slaughter in the Vatican, and now think about this record. When you look at both albums, how much were you able to change between them, and how much did you want to keep the same?
Really good question. Actually, I appreciate that. That's definitely not a cookie cutter question. um, Keep in mind when we started writing Slaughter in the Vatican, the very beginning writing process of that started in 1985. I was 15 years old and we were all very young. I think maybe one of us was in their 20s. The rest of us were all kids and teenagers. So where our minds were then and what we were listening to then is probably very different than what today bears. I'm 54 years old next month, and that's like 38 years later. So when you go from writing angry young man music to angry old man music overnight. uh True story. But with Slaughter in the Vatican being a very profound album with very profound subject matter, some of it supposed to be taken seriously, some of it not supposed to be taken seriously. It definitely had that aggressive metal approach, but with that punk rock mindset and attitude, which is where we started in New Orleans. We started in the punk rock scene. So when we made, we made albums in between, and a 27-year break between the second one and the third one. But I think really when we did this album, Defectum Omnium, it was very important to us. I really am proud of More in the Southern Skies, and I think it was definitely a strong album. But I still think we were kind of just trying to figure out how to do this again when we wrote that album. And this time we definitely knew what we didn't want to do when it came to writing this album. And we took a look at our history, and the three of us, myself, Jason, and Sasha, all agreed, let's go back to the roots. Let's go back to the punk rock side of the band. Let's go back to the early thrash side of the band. And it's okay to still continue on with the doom and the groove development that we've had. I think it helps make things more interesting and keeps us different from a lot of other bands, which is what you want. You want to have a variation. You want to have something different to offer. Our New Orleans influences are always going to be there when it comes to the old funk and blues and jazz influence that the music from our city has had on this band. But we were very, very insistent upon going back to the punk part and the thrash part. And I think it shows that we've got a lot more of that element on this album than More in the Southern Skies had.
So let me ask you this: knowing what you don't want, does that make the record easier to make than knowing what you do want?
I think communication and honesty are very, very important parts of songwriting. And when we first started writing songs, we all had a lot of ideas early. So I might have had 4 or 5 songs that I brought to the table and said, y'all check these out and let me know what y'all think. And if somebody came to me and said, well, I think these 3 are definitely good for Exhorder, but these 2, I think you might want to save for something else later on because it doesn't really fit. And I'm able to sit there and go, you know what, I think you're right. And same thing, if Jason or Sasha came in with a piece of music that I thought, yeah, this is great, or I thought, man, I don't know, maybe we could try this and make it better. And then they listen to it and listen to the suggestion, and we try it, and if it works, we keep it, and if it doesn't, we try something else. So it was very important to us all that we together wrote and communicated what we were feeling about the music. I think it helped get us the best sounding Exhorder album that we could get.
You touched something. You touched on something earlier that I felt every time that I've listened to the record now, which is to me, I'm going to choose my words carefully because I want to make sure that what I'm thinking comes across clearly, and that is that more than just an Exhorder record, this album to me sounds like a New Orleans record. And what I mean by that is that I felt like you guys took a lot of influences from all the different sounds, from all the different bands, and kind of incorporated on this record versus going with, we know this works, so let's just do this. This album to me felt a little bit more broad. Still the sound of the band, just a little bit more broad.
We definitely felt like we wanted to make this album. We didn't want to set all the settings on autopilot and then just kind of coast through the album at the same speed. To me, that's not really a very interesting album. We wanted to make it more like a journey with a lot of peaks and valleys, highs and lows, kind of like when you first start listening to bands like Beatles, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Queen, and they have these very dynamic albums with very different sounding songs. You put on a Queen album, you're going to have one that's going to melt your face off, followed by a song that almost sounds like vaudeville. And it's to me, that's the beauty of making a unique and dynamic album, is to change things up and give breathing room here before you get slapped in the face with this. Like that's really important to me.
Is it an extra weight that the legacy of the band carries that helps perhaps push you in a certain direction when it comes to writing a new album, or you don't spend too much time looking behind you and you spend more time looking forward?
Well, one thing that we don't do is we don't try to emulate or mimic anyone or anything before us. We take everything from the here and now moving forward, but we all agree, the three of us, myself, Jason, and Sasha, and I say the three of us because we're the ones that wrote the album and we produced it. Everything that we did, we had to, like, whenever there was a question about, is it good, is it right, we always said, does it belong on an album with the Exhorder logo on it? And if we could look at each other and go, yeah, I think we can justify this, then we kept it. But if there were things that weren't, it just doesn't feel like Exhorder, then we adjust it. We get rid of that and fix it to where it does. So, I mean, you're always going to have some people who are very near and dear to the early days that might not connect as well to, I mean, I know that there was a lot of talk like that when we released More in the Southern Skies. There was a lot of people like, it's not like old Exhorder. It's not. Well, no, it's not. It's not, but it's still Exhorder. And that's where we're at now. It's, we've got some elements that are similar to our past, yes, but I don't like it when a band never evolves. A band that I like, if they just keep writing the same album over and over again, I've lost interest. I'm not there anymore.
One of the great things about this record, at least from my standpoint, was the guitar sound. Man, the album sounded phenomenal on the guitar from a guitar standpoint. Did you guys do something different on this record, maybe on a production standpoint? Because it really comes across
Yes.
guitar-wise.
Yes. We did something that I'm not sure that we've done in the past. We used two different guitar amps for each performance. For the right channel, we had 100-watt angle and a JCM 900, and we had them EQ'd differently. And one of them's out far, and one of them's out maybe halfway. And we did, on the left side, we had a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier and a 60-watt angle head. kind of the same thing, EQ'd very differently from the other channels, so that when you space everything out and blend the secondary amps on each side in, maybe even with a little less gain on the secondary amps, just to help pull the percussion out of the guitar picking and the fingers, and you can feel and hear what's happening a little bit more. That's a trick I didn't invent, but it's one that I've learned over the years from talking with people who've made really successful albums, and they all swear by it. So I've tried it myself. I think it works. And then most importantly, we brought the level of the bass up. This is the first time ever in the history of Exhorder that the bass has been this prevalent in the mix. And I think it has paid dividends. It helps. It also helps that the bass hasn't been treated like a third guitar, and it's not just playing along with the guitars. The bass is doing
its own thing.
The bass's job. And it helps, I think it helps the guitar parts kind of pop a little bit better, you know?
It creates more room between the drums and guitars. It creates a little bit more depth between them.
Correct. I think it separates everything and just adds to the clarity.
I agree with you 100%. That was my perception listening to it as well. And I spoke about the guitars being outstanding on this record, but it's also a very powerful album vocally. Did that delivery come from the lyrical content on the record? Do you take some emotion out of those lyrics and then transport that into the vocal performance?
Yes, the lyrics to me are the hardest part at the end of the songwriting process. It's the thing I think that the average listener connects with the most. So it's very important to have words that people are either going to like or feel like I can relate to this. I know what this person's talking about. That's really important to me. And the meaning is less important to me than it is like, what does it mean to you? Like, I think everyone should take a song and the lyrics and absorb it into their experience of life. Like, what does it mean to you? Not what does it mean to me? It doesn't matter what it means to me anymore. The song belongs to all of us now. But yeah, it's a difficult process coming up with the words. And then you have to make sure that you make the vocal takes convincing. They have to sound good. And I was fortunate because I recorded all of the vocals for this album in this very room right here, right there. and that way I could literally roll out of bed. I didn't even have to go downstairs. I could just walk into this room and start recording if I had an idea. And when it was frustrating, I could put it down and walk away from it. And I think that way I never was looking at the clock going, I got to finish this song because the studio's about to close and I got to go home. I was just able to record everything at my leisure and get the best takes that I could get. And I think it paid off. I think it sounds honest and real, and not too perfect. There's definitely imperfections that I would sometimes leave just because the part that was recorded had a special something to it. So even if it wasn't a perfect delivery, if it had something unique and special about it, I would just leave it.
I know this is going to be a tough question to answer, but three of my favorite songs on the record are Wrath of Prophecies, Divide and Conquer, and Year Six. Not to say that the others are not good, but these ones I felt a little bit more emotionally connected to the lyrics, to the sound, to the overall delivery. When you're putting a record like this, and you're going to have to put out some singles, do you look at your favorite songs, or do you look at what you think is going to connect better, or going to perhaps be a better representation of the album?
That's a really good question, because deciding what the singles were going to be was very difficult, mostly because we feel like we have an album full of songs that are strong enough to be singles. So that's a good problem to have. When we were trying to decide on the first single, Monty Connor at Nuclear Blast stepped up and said, let me make your decision a lot easier and help you make it for you. He said, Year of the Goat is your first single. He said, it's the one that that has just that special something in the chorus, I think, that people are going to remember. He's like, what is it that you say in the year of the goat? I'm a what? I said, I'm a fucking ram. He's like, that's it. He's like, that's the line that people are going to love. So he said, okay. And turns out he wasn't wrong about it being a strong single. It's been a strong single. We've been in the Devil's Dozen on Sirius XM satellite radio since the song dropped for
Wow,
6 weeks
since it
now,
came
I
out.
think. Yeah, so you know, it's yielded results for sure. So, you know, then we said, well, what's going to be the second one? And we said, it should be something aggressive. Um, and that's why we went with Forever and Beyond Despair, and it was a nod to our punk rock side too. But we've got a third single that's going to come out on album release day, and I think people are going to be just as excited about that one, and it's going to show another strong side of what this band is. And but yeah, you know, there was every song that you mentioned that you like, your top three, they've all been in consideration for a single at some point. You know, it's just at some point you have to say, okay, this one, as good as it sounds, and it's 3.5 minutes, and it's a perfect, you know, thing. I just don't know if it's as strong of a song as this one. And you have to be honest with yourself. It's not an easy thing to to decide what makes the cut and what does not.
You mentioned the production that you guys did it yourselves. Is this the first time that you guys take that under your own belt? Because if it is, kudos to you all, because this album sounds phenomenal.
Every Exhorder album was either produced by or co-produced by the band or someone in the band. It's just something we've always had a very strong idea of what needs to happen. And I don't think we've ever found a producer that came in and convinced us that we needed to just follow them because of the complexities of the songwriting and the riffing and all that stuff. This is not a band that's, you know, much as I love the Ramones, it's the Ramones are very, you know, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus out kind of band. And Exhorder's never really been that. Now, with this album, we've done a little bit more streamlining of the songwriting process and simplifying it some, but it's still pretty complex. So we actually had conversations with a producer or two before we made this album. And, you know, I've had those producers come and tell me at the end of the conversation, I don't think y'all need a producer. I think you've got this on your own. I'll be happy to work with you guys, but you guys already know what you're doing. You already know what you want. So that was important to me. Production is just as important and passionate of a thing to me in this whole process. The songwriting to me and the production, that's where I get the most satisfaction out of it. Performing and playing, that's all great too, but I've just been on a quest for writing the best songs I can possibly write for a very long time. And now, as I step more into the producer role side by side with Jason and Sasha, it's just as important to me that, you know, they listen to things and their ideas are heard. And I, you know, if I've got a suggestion and y'all don't like it, please tell me. You know, let's. I don't want to say, well, this is my way or the highway. That's definitely not a model for success with this band. It never has been.
Over the years, what has shaped you the most when it comes to the musician that you are? Your own music, the musicians around you, music that you listen to, or just your own life experiences?
I think life experience is probably the number one ingredient for songwriting from my experience. When life is easy and comfortable, I think that's when I am writing and creating the least. It's usually stress and strife and conflict that inspire me the most to write the best music and most interesting music that I have ever put out. So you know, that's not to say that it's not possible to write under the other circumstances. I just find I'm less inspired when I'm comfortable.
I think that's a common denominator when it comes to a lot of creative minds. Not necessarily negativity, but dark times tend to inspire people the most. I don't know. Like you said, I think when you're comfortable, you're too comfortable to start to be creative. So maybe that's what causes that.
It's it's the textbook tortured artist, tormented soul. You know, it's true.
100%, 100%. One last question for you. With the album coming out March 8th, do you have already a little bit of a roadmap on what you expect the year to bring for you guys?
Well, you never know what to expect because there's always a curveball or two waiting around every corner. But our intentions for this year are to play as many shows as possible to promote the album. So we've got April and May sewn up with some dates in the US and some dates in Europe, but we're trying to get some more North American dates for the second half of the year right now, and possibly another return trip to Europe, or maybe even I'd like to get to Australia. We just got Latin America off of our bucket list. We had never been. I'd love to take this thing to Australia. I've been having a lot of people there ask for that patiently for a long time. Australia, New Zealand. I'd love to take it to Japan. So really, our goal is to take every opportunity that comes our way that makes sense and utilize it to promote the band and the album for sure.
As far as the curveballs are concerned, I think you just have to pray to Jobu. If you pray to Jobu, then it's a major league reference. I don't know if you've ever watched that movie, but maybe he'll help you with a curveball because fastballs are a lot easier to hit.
Yeah, you just close your eyes and swing, you're bound to hit it. But they don't always come in fast and straight and low.
Not always on the sweet spot. Not always on the sweet spot.
Not
Kind
at
of.
all.
Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate talking to you about the band and about the record. All the best with the album release on March 8th on Nuclear Blast. And hope to see you guys on the road at some point this year.
Thank you, Pedro. Yeah, we really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your interest.
Take care, man. All the best. Bye.
Bye.